And before we continue, I would like to extend our warm welcome to our distinguished guests who have joined us today. First, we have Ambassador of Mission of Japan to ASEAN, Your Excellency Ambassador KIYA Masahiko. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. Second, we have Mr. Kamal Mamat, Assistant Director of the Education and Youth Sports Division of the ASEAN Secretariat. Mr. Kamal, thank you. We also have Ms. Abigail Limuria, co-founder of What is Up Indonesia, who will joining us shortly. And also, we also have Mr. Ristian Supriyanto, lecturer of the Department of International Relations, Universitas Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Ristian. Also joining us today are students across ASEAN countries. Hello, everyone. They are joining us online, and thank you for tuning in. And as I've mentioned before, today is a pilot implementation of Campus Town Hall program. And I would like to introduce you about this program. And this program is designed by the Japan Foundation Jakarta as an initiative that was driven by multiple regional challenges faced by Southeast Asia as a region, including economics, education, and security. These issues often remain a high-level policy discourse with limited interaction on grassroots communities. This is where the Japan Foundation Jakarta, through its Campus Town Hall, seeks to provide students with valuable insights and foster critical perspective through dialogues with experts and interactive group discussion. And this mission inspired us to carry the theme, Translating Policy for the Masses, Grassroots Realities and Policymaking. The Campus Town Hall program is designed to take place in 3 cities, in Jakarta, which is today, and then Surabaya and Semarang, each with different topics of discussion. And for the pilot episode today in Jakarta, we specifically choose the topic of youth participation, trust in governance across ASEAN. Each session of Campus Town Hall will be divided into 2 parts. Part 1 is a talk show, and as of today, we will have Mr. Kamal Mamat of ASEAN Secretariat and Ms. Abigail Limuria of What is Up Indonesia, led by Mr. Ristian Supriyanto as the moderator. This part will be an open discussion, allowing everyone here to post questions and comments during the talk show. You can just raising your hand and the moderator will decide your speaking turn. And then the part 2 is a focus group discussion where participants will discuss and form outline for publication material with BRIN. And finally, approaching the end of the day, the committee will announce 4 awards, 1 for most outstanding participants and 3 honorable mentions. And now we move to the first agenda of today. We will have our Director General, Mr. Inami Kazumi, to deliver his welcome speech. Mr. Inami, stage is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone. 皆さんおはようございます。Selamat pagi. So, Your Excellency, Ambassador KIYA Masahiko, Ambassador of Mission of Japan to ASEAN, and Mr. Kamal Mamat, Assistant Director of Education, Youth and Sports Division, ASEAN Secretariat. And so she'll become later, Ms. Abigail Limuria, co-founder of What is Up Indonesia. And Mr. Ristian Atriandi Supriyanto, lecturer of International Relations at the University of Indonesia. And our brilliant selected participants from different universities in Jakarta and surrounding area, as well as participants from across ASEAN who are joining us today through online. I'd like to express my gratitude and so would like to say welcome to Japan Foundation Jakarta. We are gathering here in this morning for a pilot program named Campus Town Hall. As introduced by MC earlier, Campus Town Hall is one of our efforts to be a platform for students to engage directly with ASEAN Japanese experts as well as their peers to gain new insight and develop critical perspectives. We have chosen a very interesting topic for this Jakarta session, that is youth participation, trust in governance across ASEAN. We are very honored to have our stellar lineup of speakers in this morning. Ambassador KIYA, Mr. Kamal, and Ms. Abigail, thank you for willing to share your expertise and wisdom with us. And thank you, Mr. Ristian, who will be leading the discussion in this morning. Later in this day, we will also have Ms. Dayu Nirma, lecturer of International Relations at Venus University, and Ms. Chawa Lininta, Lecturer of National Relations at the University of Indonesia, who will be overseeing, providing their expertise to enrich the discussion among the students. Not only that, but we also have Ms. Fitria and Ms. Perdani Putri, researchers from Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN, who will be facilitating the participants that will turn their discussion into published articles. So, today we have so many experts here. I'd like to advise to all the participants to get the most out of it. Ask as many questions as you are curious about, and absorb all the knowledge shared by the expert. Welcome all the different perspectives with an open mind, and be active in the discussion. And don't forget to write down your thought for the output articles, because it might be a great opportunity for you meeting all these experts, and then your writing will be published by the BRIN in cooperation with Japan Foundation Jakarta. Lastly, I sincerely hope that this program will be able to bring new knowledge, different perspective on current issues, then bring the great good for the people not only in Indonesia, but furthermore in ASEAN countries and Japan too. Thank you so much. ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Mr. Inami, for your welcoming speech. And then for the next agenda, I would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador KIYA Masahiko, Ambassador of Mission of Japan to ASEAN, to deliver your keynote. Mr. Ambassador, please, the time is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Well, thank you for the introduction. Mr. Inami of Japan Foundation, Kamal of ASEC. He covers everything. Youth, sports, education. He is such an important person. I'm quite honored to have you here, especially at the launch of this new program. UE, Ristian, Supriyanto, it's one of the most prestigious universities in Indonesia, and in charge of international relations, frontline issues is covered by the UE, his department. And also all the participants are here, and also across ASEAN online. I hope people can listen to you. It's my great pleasure to be here, to be present, to make a keynote speech at the very first this town hall, the campus town hall program. It's a new program launched by the Japan Foundation in collaboration with so many institutions, including ASEAN Secretariat and universities across ASEAN. I hope this will be very successful. I've been here as ambassador to ASEAN, of Japan to ASEAN, for almost 3 years. Under Indonesian chairmanship, Laos chairmanship, and now currently Malaysian chairmanship. And I met so many young people like this. This is a picture of the occasion of the Model East Asia Summit. I think those 3 people are from Indonesia, and I think the young people from across ASEAN and Timor-Leste, and also the other 8 members, 8 participating countries in East Asia Summit. Japan, China, ROK, and Australia, New Zealand, India, and the US and Russia all came to get together with ASEAN at the center, all young people, university students. So as I experienced all those youth exchange programs, I think it's my great pleasure to share with you my own assessment about the opportunities, challenges and opportunities for the youth to get engaged, to build a future. And those 3 are the questions. So why does youth participation matter? I think this is youth participation, the theme of today's discussion of US. why does it matter for both ASEAN and Japan? So, as representing Japan, I don't, or Japan Foundation doesn't dare to just evaluate or intrude or some meddle in the domestic, setting assessment of but what Japan can do is to promote youth engagement through ASEAN-Japan youth exchange programs, providing a platform for both ASEAN and Japanese youth to just think about key global and social issues, so that they can better improve they can improve the future. So that the why does youth participation matter for both ASEAN and Japan? That's my first question. Secondly, what youth programs of ASEAN-Japan cooperation are taking place? That's my second agenda. As a matter of fact, so many, and this is one of them. My message that I hope that as you get to know youth programs between ASEAN and Japan, and also you may also find the ASEAN plus other countries in ASEAN only, or some sub-regional some activities. I think I'd like to let you know that there are so many opportunities that you can take part in. And third question then, having learned these opportunities, what next steps for you? That those three are the hopefully takeaways after your participation in today's meeting. First, sorry that it's all the letters, but the youth participation matters for ASEAN and Japan. I like to highlight two key documents related to ASEAN and Japan. One is the document, leaders document 2 years ago, the joint vision statement on ASEAN-Japan friendship and cooperation, trusted partners. So at the very beginning, it says that our vision is for a world where the shared principles and values as espoused, including the UN Charter and upheld by the AOIP, among others, ASEAN Outlook on the Pacific, among others, are ensured, where all countries can pursue peace and prosperity and uphold the principles of democracy, rule of law, and good governance. Good governance is one of the topic of today's discussion. And respect for and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Just 2 years ago, all the leaders of ASEAN and Japan got together to adopt this document. So they are committed to good governance. They are committed to human rights. They are committed to democracy. So Japan is very glad to be part of it. So ASEAN and Japan have joint responsibility to make that happen. We are committed to it. Secondly, only this year, ASEAN themselves, in the Community Vision 2045, made a commitment on the youth. This says, this bullet 36, I think Kamal is in charge on this. A community where youth can meaningfully contribute to the strengthening of a dynamic, innovative, resilient ASEAN community, and in addressing contemporary and emerging challenges, advancing sustainable socioeconomic development, and reinforcing ASEAN awareness, values, and identity. So all the ASEAN leaders are committed to promoting this, which you may not know, but this is you need to know that you are the youth, and the leaders are committed to really promoting the youth to be engaged. That is a leader's commitment. I hope that you'll make most of this opportunity. And the ASEAN and Japan matter to each other. So ASEAN is important for Japan. It's at the center of this Indo-Pacific. It's a growth center at the moment. It's a growing market for innovation as well. And also, it's a hub of multi-layered cooperation like East Asia Summit. Japan matters for ASEAN. First, because it has a growth and solution experience. Japan grew earlier and suffered and also faced with all the challenges like the environmental issues or like aging or congestion. So all the experiences are there, and all the solutions are there. And Japan is very proud of technology and craftsmanship, but quite detailed. We are very proud of a Japanese detailed attachment. And also, Japan is a leading global democratic power, member of G7, G20. I think Indonesia is a member of G20, but and also Japan is one of the most frequent non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. So ASEAN is now a global actor, but with Japan, ASEAN can really exert and influence the world in a more in an effective manner. So there are plenty of opportunities of of collaboration between ASEAN and Japan, including the youth. And why is this close relationship between ASEAN and Japan was it realized? I think I studied history, and one of the landmark occasion was about 50 years ago in 1970s when Fukuda Doctrine was adopted. You know, Japan is very proud to have a good relationship with ASEAN, most trusted at the moment, but there were anti-Japanese demonstrations in the 1970s. Japan remembers what we went through during the Second World War. So we are always learning history. And also after that, there was quite a rapid economic growth. And then after military presence, then a huge economic presence was here in ASEAN. And people were not very happy about it, that high-handed Japanese approach, and made a big protest. And quite very experienced, intelligent ASEAN young students or former students got together to give the Japanese leadership a recommendation how to manage ASEAN-Japan relations. And this is the embodiment of that direction, principle, which is still valid to the present day. Number one, Japan should commit to peace and not try to be a sort of overwhelming military power. Now I think it's getting more difficult because there's another overwhelming military power coming up. So Japan needs to strengthen its military engagement. But I think Japan needs to maintain a peace, a commitment to peace. That's number one. Number two, Japan should not do business with ASEAN, extract resources, do business, make money, but rather this heart-to-heart understanding based on mutual confidence and trust. The exchange needs should cover not only political and economic areas, but also social and cultural areas. So that's exactly Japan Foundation is doing. We should not be just transactional, just work together for peace, work together for economy, but we need to respect each other as an equal partner, as individual people. I think still, I hope that the Japanese people, I'm very glad to see more Japanese people, more people in ASEAN learn the culture of each other. And that's a very foundation of mutual respect. And that's why, so we are committed to it, and that's why ASEAN trusts us, and we redouble our efforts. We don't take that for granted. Number three, Japan's approach to ASEAN as a whole, the point is supporting self-help efforts. So they cooperate positively with them in their own efforts to strengthen their solidarity and resilience. So ASEAN is now upholding ASEAN unity and centrality, supporting each other. I think probably in various big powers, ASEAN needs to be united to keep this place a safer and most prosperous place. And Japan is supporting ASEAN's solidarity. ASEAN's unity and solidarity is for Japan's interest, because it will not be taken by others, it will not be torn apart. So strong ASEAN is Japan's interest. And resilient and self-respecting, self-reliant ASEAN is Japan's interest. So Japan does not intend to dominate or rule. So those are the key principles which Japan was committed, announced 50 years ago. And then I think one of the academics told me the reason why Japan is not so trust was that Japan observed and followed through this commitment in the last 50 years. So this is and I think we continue upholding this for the next 50 years. Now let me move on to the number 2. So this is the background of say why ASEAN-Japan youth collaboration is important. Second, what kind of ASEAN-Japan youth exchange and collaboration programs are taking place? The answer is many, and he's in charge of everything. So number 1, it's the longest, the one with longest history is SHIP. When I came here and talked with the permanent representative of ASEAN, I got some answers. And then they said, "Oh, SHIP program was great." What's SHIP? That was this SHIP for Southeast Asian and Japanese youth program, which started in 1974. That started when ASEAN was only 5 countries. And I think the program was much longer, 3 months, and covering all the 5 countries. What took place? At that time, ASEAN was not very affluent, not many opportunities. So there are very highly competitive opportunities were given to ASEAN people, and highly select, after stringent selection process, they came to join this program. And 5 countries plus Japan. I heard from that my counterpart in ASEAN mission, the Philippines, as a matter of fact. She said, a lady, at that time, in the 1970s, countries in ASEAN looked to the West, US, Europe, and didn't know much about each other. No good communication, collaboration. But then they came on board and got together for 3 months in a ship and learned each other. They're highly intellectual. And they stayed at home state and including Japan. And then those alumni network, it is now 48. The alumni network still exists, and those now after say decades, they became high-ranking officials and high-ranking people, and this still continues. And I attended their 48th one, and they were the government was committed, and all the participants are dancing and singing and making presentations, and stayed in Japan, came to Jakarta as well. So that was a great program. I just spend less time for others. Then so next year in January, the next one taking place. Then Genesis, it's a youth exchange program. I think ASEC is fully supportive of it. It's I think plenty of young people are invited to Japan, and a new program are added. One of them is the ASEAN-Japan Student Conference. So it's 100 students from 10 ASEAN member states came to Japan, I think this January, and went through all the programs, including a call on the Parliamentary Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. And then the third one is the WA Project 2.0. It's 2x intellectual and cultural exchange in both directions, and Nihongo partners, Japanese language, some supporting teachers. So I guess this program is part of this. So I think this is Japan Foundation's initiative. It's doubled. Skip it. And then one of them is similar to that student conference, but it's a Japan ASEAN Youth Forum, taking action for social change. I think it's already three events have already taken place every year since 2023. So it's in collaboration with the ASEAN University Network, AUN. Then Sakura Science Program, it's 1,500 youth from ASEAN plus 3 countries are invited to Japan. Then Takehashi Project, it's about 100 students are invited to study in Japan for 5 months, high school students. Then Nexus, the newly launched program 2 years ago, it's $100 million commitment in the next 5 years. We are hoping that another 100 million coming 5 years later. But this is not only joint research, but researchers exchange. Say, from Vietnam, semiconductor undergraduates, graduates, undergraduates and graduates majoring in semiconductor are invited to Japan. Because I think we need more students from ASEAN to study in Japan on those high-tech areas. Then the startups and social business. There's this Young Business Leaders Summit and the Generation Z, the Next Generation Business Summit were launched in 2023, and it was launched in Karuizawa in Japan. Last year it took place in Kyoto. This year in December there will be this summit in Tokyo. I hope this will be sustainable. So I met some of them myself, and I was great impressed by Indonesian startup using a video, YouTube, and for teaching sign language for autistic students. And so this is quite social business. In many places in ASEAN, we are supporting the exchanges of those entrepreneurs in ASEAN. Further, there are more. This is ASEAN-Japan Center-led ASEAN-Japan Young Environmental Leaders Network. And I think earlier this year, about 40 young people came to our mission. So they had a good 3-day program and made a visit to our ASEAN Secretariat. And this is a young people's network. I think this is a good thing. I think send a good signal, a message. Then ASEAN Youth Organization. It's a prize winning. I think ASEAN Prize. They got the ASEAN Prize last year, and I think the Japanese young youth organization and the ASEAN Youth Organization got together to launch this the very first ASEAN-Japan Youth Summit. It was last year, and they came to Jakarta, and I met them, and there was a study tour as well, and they are planning the next one next year. I think this year, and the next year will be the second one. So, and then Model East Asia Summit. It's the collaborative work. It's organized by by ASEAN Foundation, but fully supported by Japan, Australia, and China. Usually, we got in ES, we got usually two blocks. One is China, Russia, the other one is the rest. But this is supported by both China and Japan and Australia, which itself is a good encompassing initiative. And the very first one was launched this year. I hope that can continue next year. This is the 20th anniversary of East Asia Summit. So we took this opportunity. Japan took the lead in inviting the other two countries to support the ASEAN Foundation to make that happen. Very first Model East Asia Summit. This is another Japan's contribution to ASEAN-led mechanism. So those are, I think there are more, but I think those are some highlights. I think I think Japan Foundation led the Peace Ambassadors visit coming up next month. I think that's later this month, next month. That's another one. But Japan is providing opportunity to students across ASEAN to take part in ASEAN-Japan programs. First, for the ASEAN students to get together, learn from each other, and also just to get some inspiration and some stimulus from the Japanese students, which is good for Japan as well. And then and strengthen themselves, and then broaden their perspectives. So, and this, you are now taking part in another newly launched ASEAN-Japan Youth Exchange Youth Program. I hope you could make use of this opportunity, and also may join others as well, because you now know that there are so many ASEAN-Japan youth opportunities. So, what to do next? So this was that I explained the joint vision statement, trusted partners. The first one is a heart-to-heart partnership across generations and including youth. And then implementation plan, 130 cooperation items. And then it's quite lengthy. 130 is quite a difficult handle. So we just categorize them into 44 areas of cooperation based on 3 pillars of heart-to-heart partnerships and co-creation of economy and society and peace and stability. So my hope is that just maybe including today's topic of governance, maybe you could also choose any of these issues and study what is taking place between ASEAN and Japan to deepen collaboration and co-creation for the improvement for the future. So on those 44 areas of cooperation, the general idea is this. ASEAN can make use of Japan. And Japan cannot prosper without ASEAN in many ways. So we've had 50 years of cooperation, heart-to-heart understanding, so which fostered trust through multi-layered exchanges, including youth. And now we have challenges, emerging global economic and social challenges, which needs solution. So solution needs to be co-created. Challenges are on the ground in ASEAN, technologies and ideas, experiences are on Japan, and opportunities are here. Growing opportunities are here in ASEAN. So ASEAN and Japan can get together to co-create solution. But then that co-creation, trust and co-creation needs to be developed in 2 directions. One is to the up. The solution can be scaled up to the world through Indo-Pacific, AOIP, and the world. That's the upper direction. But probably the other, even more important, sustainable challenge, solution is come from within. That jointly realizing an innovative, inclusive, and sustainable society. So Japan needs to really take in more bright, energetic people from ASEAN in the Japanese society, and then ASEAN can just facilitate exchanges and maybe invite Japanese companies or Japanese actors, and so both. And ASEAN is known for diversity. ASEAN can make full use of diversity to enlighten Japanese so that Japan can more prosper with ASEAN. So at the society level, at the youth level even, it's a foundation of our countries. So as we aspire to exert a big impact in the world, in the region of the world, we need to really solidify our society, that our people can sustainably create and support the values of our countries and the region. So this is my takeaway from my experience going through the 50th year of ASEAN-Japan Friendship and Cooperation and 2-year follow-up. So my concluding, I think I spent 10 minutes more than assigned time, but I hope it's okay. Just this is a final word. I learned this from this VMAP from a friend of mine who is doing some financial investment business. And he worked with so many companies, startups, and I think this is his takeaway. So to be successful, to have a happy life, first you have to dream. You have to have a vision to make things happen. So dream whatever you like. You dream. You want see some good future. But just dreaming, you not realize anything. So you have to just commit yourself. So I need to realize that dream. You need to identify yourself with that dream. That's a mission. But just dreaming and thinking will not bring about anything. You need to take action, study or do something. And even students can do anything with their friends, speaking up, doing posting, social media, anything. Take concrete action, start your work. And that's try to realize a dream. But usually with lack of funding, lack of support, lack of understanding anything, you need to face a challenge. How to overcome a challenge? You need passion. So with passion, and you just continue doing it. So those are VMAP is the way for you to make things happen, and I'm practicing it myself. And after all, one of the quite established business leaders, I think Inamori Kazuo-san, who made this AU, reinvigorated Japan Airlines. He said, after all, what is to respond to what the question I said, what is the most important thing for business? I think most thing is passion. So so many nice words. Say the Uniqlo's Yanai-san said that you have to have a big dream. You can achieve, say, 50%, 20%, 10%, 5%, 1%, but have a big dream. If you can achieve 1%, it's still quite a big dream, quite a big achievement. So my message to young people is that I'm still doing. I like to show my, but so you have such a great opportunity that Indonesia is growing, ASEAN is growing, so many opportunities. Now ASEAN is so successful, the most successful regional organizations in the world. So you have opportunities. Just please make use of it, and I think Japan will be very pleased to see your success. I think with all the challenges that Japan is supporting many areas, including having organizing this event, I think that Japan's goodwill, but Japan's benefit. So I hope that please make use of Japan's opportunities for you to succeed. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your insightful remarks. Okay, thank you very much. And next we will begin with the first part of today's program, the talk show. And I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Ristian. Mr. Ristian is a lecturer with the Department of International Relations and researcher at the ASEAN Study Center, FISIP University Indonesia. He's also a research fellow with the Indonesia Sinology Forum, FSI Jakarta, and PhD scholar at the Strategic and Defense Study Center, Australian National University. Ristian obtained a Master of Science in Strategic Studies from the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, and a Bachelor of Social Science in International Relations from University of Indonesia. Thank you. And Mr. Ristian, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you today? How are you? Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, I hope I can be as passionate as your speakers now. And so are the students, right? I think there are three important key points from your speech. I think number one, ASEAN is not just a group of countries. I think it's a community, right? A community of peoples. And, you know, we are talking about ASEAN as a community. It is also part of the global community, right? Secondly, when we talk about a people-centered ASEAN, I think the youth are also the center of the people, right? And finally, the third point is Japan is a critical partner in youth empowerment in ASEAN, and I encourage all of you to take up all the opportunities offered by ASEAN-Japan collaboration. So our first speaker, Mr. Kamal Mamat, will perhaps discuss about what opportunities that the youth in ASEAN can take and empowering themselves. So Mr. Kamal Mamat is head of the Education, Youth and Sports Division at the ASEAN Secretariat. In this capacity, he focuses on building relationships and connecting the dots among the different stakeholders in the ASEAN education, youth and sports sector. He is involved in the development and management of various intra- and inter-regional programs and projects and facilitates relevant meetings across the different ASEAN sectoral mechanisms. Prior to the Secretariat, Kamal has been in strategic roles related to education pathways and mobility, community relations and outreach, as well as higher education admission policies. Mr. Kamal, please join us on the stage.
Thank you, and thank you, Ambassador, for the inspiring speech. I just want to start by perhaps sharing a complaint to you. 30 years ago, there was a young university student by the name of Kamal Mamat who applied to join the Nippon Maru ship for SEAP. He didn't get it. So anyway, I just want to start by saying thank you so much to Japan for organizing this activity, and I'm happy to be part of the pilot program for this one as well as the next Japan Foundation activity. And allow me to start the context. I know this is supposed to be a talk show, but allow me to start the talk show with the context of ASEAN. The first slide, please. In terms of youth governance, it is a very important part of the ASEAN youth sector. And I'm going to explain to you why it is a very important aspect of youth governance. If you can see from the slide, like what Ambassador KIYA mentioned earlier, there's 670 million ASEAN people. And out of these 670 million, about 220 million of these people make up of youth population, right? In this regard, the youth is 1/3 of the ASEAN population, and what Ristian mentioned, it is an important demographic. So we need to recognize the importance of the youth sector in this regard. When it comes to youth, there are various definitions per country. Okay, in the case of Malaysia, for example, it's 15 to 30, right? For Vietnam, I believe it's 15 to 24. But I think generally in the ASEAN context, we take the youth sector as people from the age of 15 to 30, right? So that's the general definition that we reflect in the Youth Development Index. Now, there are strategic documents that govern the ASEAN youth sector. And many of you would know, and like what Ambassador KIYA mentioned, there was an ACV, ASEAN Community Vision 2045, and before that, we have the ASEAN Community Blueprint 2025. And in this blueprint, we developed sectoral plans which help us to achieve our visions. And in the case of the youth sector, for this current work plan from 2021 to 2025, we have 5 priority areas that we would hope to achieve by the end of 2025. And in this case, where the theme of this campus town hall is concerned, it's really about priority area number 4 on youth participation and engagement. In terms of the platforms, we have youth volunteers across ASEAN member states, knowledge exchange, dialogues, and recognition of youth achievements. In terms of capacity development, we have a lot of programs, and Ambassador KIYA has just mentioned some of them to you in terms of ASEAN-Japan relations. In terms of voices, engaging youth leaders in the ASEAN and SOMI. SOMI is the Senior Officials Meeting on Youth, which takes place every year. And we also have ASEAN's youth voices towards policies and programs. All right, so this is what we mean by participation and engagement. In terms of the APEX, we have the ASEAN Youth Dialogue and the ASEAN Youth Interface with ASEAN leaders at the sidelines of the ASEAN summits. So in the case of the Malaysian chairmanship this year, it happened in May during the 46th ASEAN Summit. So this is where all the youth leaders across ASEAN were invited to meet the leaders and voice out their aspirations for the youth in the future. So these are all the different platforms that's available for youth. Now, in terms of partners, and this is something that is very critical for us to acknowledge, in terms of the work of partners across ASEAN. And this is not something that, we have a limited number of, because we want to acknowledge the role of grassroots youth activities, across ASEAN. And among these important ones that I want to highlight here include the Community for ASEAN Youth Cooperation, which is a Malaysian-based organization, ASEAN Youth Organization, which has a strong presence across all the ASEAN countries, Young Parliamentarians of IPA, ASEAN Foundation, and Japan Foundation, obviously, has been very critical in supporting activities that work with our youth. All right, so in this regard, this list is non-exhaustive. There are a lot of other organizations, grassroots organizations out there working for the common ASEAN objective. I just want to highlight two things here. In terms of youth at the national level participation, I just want to highlight one example in terms of active participation, active governance of youth, which is the Sangguniang Kabataan in Philippines. This is the young parliamentarian mechanism that the Philippines government has introduced for youth aged 15 to 24 to take part in active participation in terms of youth policies. And in fact, they are recognized with their own budget for them to do activities related to their priorities. So this is one example of youth governance in the Philippines. The work of young parliamentarians of IPA, the Inter-ASEAN Young Parliamentarians, is really quite important in terms of highlighting the role of youth as well. So, in fact, with our current SOMI, Senior Officials Meeting on Youth, our current chair is a youth herself. Her name is Commissioner May Gonzalez from the Philippines, and she's only 30 years old. Right? So she is the chair of SOMI, and she has done a wonderful job, okay, voicing out youth aspirations. And these are just some of the things that, we encourage our youth to participate in. I think Ambassador KIYA has mentioned a lot about the ASEAN-Japan Youth Initiative, all the different activities, and SIAP, as the ship, for example, has been around for the longest time. Some of my friends were involved in it, and until now, they are still part of the alumni. It's a very strong alumni. And of course, I just want to also highlight Genesis in terms of a long-standing program that has benefited a lot of ASEAN youth. And these are the things that I think Ambassador has mentioned as well. And of course, Campus Town Hall today is the pilot one that I'm very proud to be part of. So if you have the time, I want to encourage you to look at all the different documents related to youth, right? Especially if you're university students and you're researching on ASEAN and you are looking at all the different initiatives and programs that involve the youth sector, do check out our publications that's available in the ASEAN.org website. And with that, thank you so much. And back to you, Mr. Moderator. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Kamal Mamat. I think you elaborated and reiterated some of what the ambassador has said. I think the 5 important pillars of ASEAN youth engagement are very important. And perhaps the second speaker can also add on to what extent the youth is actually not just participate, but also participate in political engagements, right? So I think the ASEAN young parliamentarians of ASEAN is one aspect of it, but certainly there will be more aspects that you can contribute as well. So our second speaker is Miss Abigail Limuria. Abigail is the co-founder of What Is Up Indonesia, which is an independent media that curates Indonesian socio-politics in an accessible manner for internationally raised Indonesians. So for those of you who have lived overseas, I think this is for you. Aside from What's Up Indonesia, Abigail has co-written and independently published the book Lalita 51 Cerita Perempuan Hebat Indonesia, where she has sold over 4,000 copies across Indonesia. More recently, Abigail has also co-written the book Makanya Mikir, where she has sold over 10,000 copies in just 4 months. Abigail has spoken in many stages, including Mata Najwa, Adia Fest, TEDx, Conference on National Strategic Projects, ASEAN Plus Youth Summit, so she's also an alumni of ASEAN Youth Engagement, and many others. Ms. Abigail, please. So perhaps the first question goes to Pak Kamal Mamat. Yeah. When you said about ASEAN has the majority of ASEAN population, they are still, they belong to the young generation, right? To what extent do you think that ASEAN has captivated the motivation for ASEAN youth to engage in political issues, engage in political discussions?
Thank you, Pak Ristian. There are I want to start by perhaps sharing the initiative from the national level and the regional level. In terms of the regional level, there are obviously a lot of activities that took place supported by ASEAN and the dialogue partners. And these include, like what I mentioned just now, all the different platforms for ASEAN to participate in. The Model ASEAN, for example, is just one of the examples that the youth voice out their. But in terms of youth voice out their aspirations, but in terms of the political engagement of youth, it's fair to say that many of these political engagement happen at the national level, and these political engagements are dependent on the countries they are part of, right? Some countries within ASEAN have more participatory elements. Indonesia is one good example, right? Some other countries within ASEAN, there are more centralized participation. That means there are more formal mechanisms for youth to be part of within the country. So in this regard, we do not have a definitive way in which ASEAN youth are engaged politically, right? It is based on the national priorities as well as the different national platforms available for them to speak.
So it varies country by country.
Yes.
What do you say, Ms. Abigail, about the situation in Indonesia? We know that there were demonstrations recently in Jakarta and other cities. And I think, from looking at this demonstration, they are very politically informed. They are politically aware. But to what extent do you think that the barriers are there for the youth, for Indonesian youth, and perhaps some other countries that you know of, in trying to air their political aspiration and political views?
Okay, thank you for the question, and thank you for the Japan Foundation for inviting me today, of course. Very honored. I think to answer your question, I think back then, for example, 5 to 8 years ago, I think the main issue with youth, especially here in Indonesia, is that there's a rise of political apathy, where a lot of youth, they don't really want to engage in politics. They don't really know about their country's politics. They're not very involved in it. However, I think now, political apathy is no longer our issue. I think youth are already aware. We are already very, very much hyper-aware even how very political everything is, how politics intervene in every single sphere of our lives. But the issue has now become whether the youth stays optimistic or not. Because I think we are now experiencing a lot of youth who are aware and yet pessimistic. And I think that might be an even harder thing to fix rather than those who are ignorant or apathetic earlier. Regarding youth participation in politics, I think there's a huge demand, there's a huge interest from the youth, especially here. I can only speak here, especially in Indonesia, but I know like all the other ASEAN country has also demonstrated how involved they would love to be in politics and their country's affair by exactly that, the demonstration, for example. And I think it's unfair to really paint the demonstration as something that is very overtly violent, or that it's something like of a Gen Z protest, how a lot of news has painted to be. Because, for example, the recent protests here in Indonesia, it's not just Gen Z who are protesting. It is people from all across sectors, and I think that really shows how a lot of youth have interest. However, whether that interest is received or not is not up to the youth, right? It is up to the government, and that is a whole another different discussion. But I think the fact that the demonstration has become that big, the youth in Indonesia, they don't have protesting as a hobby, right? Like, we like to, study in university, get into all these cool programs, go overseas so that we can have a more nourishing experience for our lives. But the fact that it has come to protest means it's like the last resort. It means the frustration has reached a boiling point. They have been participating, may it be sharing content, may it be going to discussion when there are forums, but maybe some of them feel like those efforts are not being heard. And so the protests happen. And so absolutely there are incredible political interest for participation, but whether it is received or not, there is a different discussion. And I can see that with our other ASEAN friends. Like, for example, in What Is Up Indonesia, we have a podcast where we talk with various actors. Recently, we had Pita from Thailand, who is the leader of the Move Forward Party, and he talked a lot about like the youth movement in Thailand. And me and my co-host Andovi, when talking to Pita, we found so many similarities between Indonesia and Thailand. And then our audience who came to the comment section, we have audience from Myanmar, from Singapore, and they say like, oh wow, us ASEAN have very similar issues, and we have very similar political aspiration and barriers even. And so that I think those type of exchange should happen more often.
Yeah, I think this is interesting because when we talk about ASEAN, we are talking about the community, and this is a youth-centered community, perhaps because the youth constitute the majority of ASEAN population. And when we see all youth, not just in one country, but also they have exchanges with youth from other ASEAN countries. So, Mr. Kamal, do you think that this is something that a growing trend in ASEAN? And I come from international relations, so we tend to see, back then ASEAN is quite elitist organization, not so much grounded, not very connected to the grassroots. But do you think this is something that is changing in ASEAN landscape, where the youth is going to drive many of ASEAN activities and engagements to be a more people-centered organization?
Thanks. I have to say, at the onset of the ASEAN founding in 1967, a lot of these so-called aspirations are rooted by the political leaders, right? And they are, at the very start, there were only 5 countries in ASEAN, and it's basically a series of political aspirations as encapsulated in the Bangkok Declaration. But over time, in 2015 particularly, there is a stronger aspiration for us to listen to the voices of the community. All right. So it did not just happen at the very start. It is an evolution. And in 2015, we have the ASEAN Community 2025 document, which really set off that aspirations for voices to be heard. When we want voices to be heard, we need to be supported, right? And how are we supported? Many ways. One is for the countries in ASEAN to lead and provide the platforms for voices to be heard. Second, we depend a lot on our partners, including Japan, to provide support for us to give platforms to our different communities to express their voices. And the last one, and which is the most important one if you ask me, at the grassroots level, people who are very passionate about voicing out their aspirations and making it heard And that is the most important part that I think many of the more successful youth organizations, including yours, would have the element in terms of being very passionate in voicing out your aspirations. And I think in terms of the platforms, this is something that we depend on institutions, we depend on government agencies to nominate, right? So in the case of activities like ASEAN-Japan activities, your participation, there's very little control at the ASEAN Secretariat as to who could be part of. So we depend and we trust that the agencies, nominating agencies, would choose the right participants for these different platforms. But at the end of the day, again, like what Ambassador KIYA mentioned, the passion is what will drive you to be heard. And in our open session for SOMI, the Youth Senior Officials Meeting, we do invite passionate organizations to come forward to share with us their stories and also explore how they can be further supported. So in the case of ASEAN Youth Organization, AYO, Sanjaya, one of the founders, have always been invited to give us a collective voice of the youth in ASEAN. And I do admit that it might not represent all the voices, but it could represent key voices in the youth sector.
Yeah, I think it's a very critical point about forcing out, because as you said, there is a political frustration, even some, pessimism about how things are going, and so the youth needs channel to fan out that frustration. So perhaps, as we wait for voices from the audience, perhaps I would ask Ms. Abigail, what do you think of the youth can do in order to amplify their voices? So we understand that there are various means, various tools, various channels where they can voice out their frustrations, but what do you think are the most decisive channels that they can use to amplify their collective concerns?
I don't think I can say that there's one absolute definitive channel that is the most effective for youth to voice out their aspiration, because again, I feel like we should stop treating the youth as a collective, as one collective, because inside youth there are different aspirations, there are different types of people. Even in this room, right? I bet if I ask 3 people what their aspiration are or what's their ideal way for their aspiration to be heard, they'll have 3 different answers. And so I think we need to, instead of grouping the youth as one whole body, we should see them based on interest, based on talent, and based on community they're a part of. And if there are different interests and different agenda and different preferences, there should be many different channels. And that's why I really love to hear earlier about the Japan-ASEAN initiative. There are so many. There are exchange programs, there are forums for different types of people to explore. And I think those type of initiative can really help the youth channel their voices. Because I think it is too simplistic for us to assume that the youth voices will only be heard if the government respond. That is not the only way. We do not have to wait for the government, quote unquote, to respond formally to us, and then we get validation that our voices are heard. I think there are many different ways, and if, for example, the formal channel, if a lot of, for example, I'll speak personally for my friends, for example, a lot of us feel like we have tried the conventional way for our voices to be heard, and yet we feel like it's not being heard as effectively. And so we move towards innovation. So for example, we can innovate by creating initiative, by creating works of art, by creating a lot of provocative work. For example, my friend created a musical about political drama here in Indonesia, and it was incredibly successful. He posted it on YouTube. For those of you who haven't watched, called DPR Musical by Andovi and Jovial. They also even created Polarisasi that they live perform, and it was sold out 3 times. So creative avenues like that, it creates disruptions and innovation to a point that the government cannot not respond, or the government will have to pay attention. Also, by writing a book, by doing other avenue, by creating a media, for example. So there are a lot of creative avenue actually that maybe might be more effective in this political climate, because the government might not be as defensive when they receive that type of innovation, and they would be more open to hearing, for example, criticism or feedback or things like that. And I think another part that the youth can definitely do that, and I think have been doing really effectively, is have international network. And so I think voicing out our concern doesn't have to be domestically, only within the country, right? In the social media, in the internet, we don't have any borders. We can connect with other people. We can talk. We can make friends with other people. And I think those of us who are internationally connected, and especially like my audience in What Is Up Indonesia, who are internationally raised, they can connect with international forums, with other networks, and that creates amplification from outside to inside Indonesia. And I think those are very effective as well. Now, in today's world, they're more connected than ever. And so I feel like with creativity, with network, leveraging technology and social media, the youth can actually create so much, and they can voice out their voices and make those in power listen to them through a lot of creative means.
Thank you for that. So important aspect is the youth is not a one uniform mass, but it's a very diverse community with diverse aspiration and motivations. But I think there is also a unifying aspect as well. And as you pointed out, there is a chance for international youth solidarity, on certain aspects, on certain issues. Not everyone might be joined, but there is certainly that aspect of solidarity. Perhaps we can invite aspirations, motivations, views from you to basically air your concerns. Anyone? Yes. Please introduce yourself and your affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Abigail. I'm from University of Indonesia. I'm majoring in history. So what I want to talk about is, in the recent couple of months, there have been outrage happening in Nepal. It's involved heavily the youth, because they are, I think, fed up with their own government, the corrupt government. I think the situation is actually, I could say, almost very similar to us. Yeah. Do you think, or do you have any opinion on that? And do you think that will be a future of Indonesia if we don't have any kind of formal or legal, like the union of youth? I think Miss Abigail has said it very clearly that we should have a diverse community of the youth organization, but I think it still needs to be united, because if we are keeping them the different communities, I think the power is still going to be weak, as we have seen in Indonesia. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Melanie Atifa. I'm currently an undergraduate international relations student at Universitas Indonesia. And I'm curious about how young people can truly transform politics. Is genuine change more likely to happen by working within the government institutions and reforming them from the inside, or by creating innovative movements and initiatives outside the formal political sphere? I think that's all for my question. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Yossi, and I am from LSPR. My questions come from the Miss Abigail's statement about the youth in Indonesia is very aware current in our political situations. Maybe because the past issues that we've been faced. But my question is: do we really aware? Do we really know? Do we really knowledgeable to participate in politics? Because it might be dangerous if we just I could say FOMO in a issue-based participants, and how we can assure that youth participant can be a long-lasting participants, not just based on the issue-based participants. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 3 questions, perhaps. Oh,
Okay, hello. My name is Rasha Putra Duyansha. I am from the University of Budi Luhur. And although there have been many programs and initiatives to uplift political engagement and political voices by the youth, especially those from ASEAN, for example, right? There is still some level of skepticism. Maybe it's due to doubts by the older generations, due to fear that maybe the youth lack competence or experience. What I want to ask today is, specifically for Kamal Mamat, is how do you think the youth of today can get around that layer of skepticism and get their voices and opinions heard? Because I firmly believe that even if the voices of the youth are amplified and if you scream as loud as you want, it won't matter if the older generation and if people who doubt the younger generations won't hear or just simply ignore the voices of the youth. That is my question. Thank you.
So the first question, essentially, will Indonesia be like Nepal if nothing changed? And how can we be united? Because right now, the youth are very diverse. Like, of course, Indonesia's strength has always been our diversity, but that can be our challenge as well, right? I cannot say for sure whether Indonesia will be like Nepal, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of factors that comes into play in Nepal politics that we might not know. Just as like how a lot of international community cannot understand how complicated the internal politics and how each factors work in Indonesia here, right? But I do know that the protests, even though now it already died down and the government said that, oh, everything's good, everything's back to normal, it's not. People are just tired. If I can be honest, I think the protests died down not because anything has been resolved, but because people are tired and a lot of people were captured and there's a lot of casualties, and so people just need to cool off. And so this is really a message to the government. I think we have done all we can, in my opinion. The people have protested all they can, in all shapes of form, in all ways imaginable, in my opinion, and now the ball is in their park, right? Will they actually follow through? Because I feel like if they don't follow through, then you're right, the root of the problem is not addressed, and the government cannot blame if another uprising or if another protest broke off, because they haven't addressed the issues. And so that's all I can say. I cannot say for sure, because I feel like the responsibility to address and to respond is in their capacity, because we have done all we can. But it is true that I think we have gone through a lot of wave of protests, right? And I think with each wave of protests, with each challenges and barrier that we face, the Indonesian people, especially the youth, have been experiencing an accelerated political education. We are now highly, highly aware, and we understand more and more where the barriers are, where our weaknesses are, where our movement usually fall. And you're right. And one of the things is we realize that we have a lot of passionate groups, but they rarely talk to one another. And and this is what I learned, when crisis hit, for example, like the recent protests, we no longer have time to build trust, because building trust takes time, right? When crisis hit, it's time to work. But unfortunately, we haven't been building enough trust between enough groups of people that we cannot move fast enough. And so I think what we can do concretely now, when things are okay, is to start talking to one another and start building trust. Because building trust needs to be made when things are okay, like now. And so that if it happened again, we can work faster because we are already friends with one another. And so I think that's all I can say to how we can be united. And especially now we're almost at the date of Sumpah Pemuda. I think it's very relevant because if we remember history, how did Sumpah Pemuda came about? It used to be different groups of people, right? Zhong Jaffa, Zhong Celebes, and all the other groups. But they came together and they unite under one goal. And so I think that spirit is still very relevant today, and we can definitely learn a lot from history. And then second, basically, the question is it more possible to make a change from outside or inside? And I don't think I can safely say like, oh, definitely outside or definitely inside. I think it needs to be both. Definitely both, because I think people who are working from the inside, whether they want to push for change, even if they have the authority to do it, they cannot do it unless they have the backing from outside, aka the people's will. You know, that's why we see a lot of policy starting to be pushed after the people made something viral, or we see something get canceled after something gets viral. So outside the man actually have a lot of impact towards how the inner working, how the internal people are working. Why? Because a lot of politicians, the main currency for them is electability. And so they would like to stay favorable. And so if the demand is more favorable towards A or towards B, they will follow, if it's big enough. But if it's only from outside and we don't have anyone pushing for our agenda from the inside, it would be very difficult as well, because they can hear all they want, but if nobody on the inside actually doing the groundwork, working, drafting the policies, actually negotiating in the meetings, then it's going to be very hard for whatever our agenda to be passed. And so we need both working at the same time. And I think that's why communication between the inside and outside needs to be more established between those who have similar aspirations. And that's why we cannot be anti-politics or anti-political parties, because within those organizations, there are actors who want change just as we do. And we need to start working together. And then thirdly, is essentially, do we know enough to be able to participate in politics, right? And how can we make sure that the participation is more long-lasting as opposed to just like eruption here and there? I think for us to speak about politics, to voice out our aspiration, we do not need any credentials. As long as we are a citizen of this country, we have a right to talk about politics. I think politics should not be reserved as a topic that can only be talked about by those who, for example, graduated political science, or for those who have experienced Model United Nations, I think for me, politics is like math. I don't care what you do, who you are, you need to know it. Because you're gonna use it, because it governs your life anyway. If you don't know math, you can't purchase stuff, you cannot do the basic things you want to do. And we live as a citizens in this country, in a democratic country, and every single one of us, when we reach 17, we're gonna have to vote. And so we need to understand, and we have a right to talk about it. And so I don't think politics should be a knowledge that are gatekeep. However, of course, there are a level of participations, right? If we're only voicing out our aspirations, everyone can do it. But once you start teaching, for example, or you start organizing, you of course need a certain level of knowledge. And so it really depends on how you are participating. And I do think that, like I mentioned in the earlier part, in Indonesia, I feel like the youth are highly aware already. What needs to be increased also are the political literacy. I think we are very aware, but our literacy is still slowly hiking up. And I think we need to accelerate that as well. And lastly, how we can make it more long-lasting. I think we need to learn from those who have come before us, the older generation of activists, for example, of NGOs, for example, even ASEAN. These people are highly experienced in building a formal organization, in being organized, or even in the labor union. They are very, very experienced in how they can organize something, huge mass of people, and make it long-lasting. And so I think with these protests, there has been a lot of eruption of youth participation, but I think these participations should be captured and collaborated on with these other more established organizations so it can be more long-lasting. And I hope, again, there'll be more cross-sector, cross-generational collaboration and knowledge exchange so that we can learn from one another, because these people, they are experienced in organizing, but we, the youth, might be more experienced in making something go viral. And those two, if we work together, we can achieve something that is much more long-lasting and much more comprehensive. I hope my answer answers all of the questions.
Thank you. I think Abigail has answered most of the questions asked. And I think, can I just ask how many history students here in the audience? Only one. Okay, but some of you might have also been in subjects or studying subjects related to history. And perhaps like those who have studied history would know, many of the changes in the world at the political level happen through youth activism, right? In the turn of the century, 20th century, in Singapore, for example, where I come from, one of the key activists on literacy among the Malay Singaporeans is this organization called Kaum Muda. Kaum Muda is also an offshoot of an organization in Indonesia as well. And this is one of the important organizations that actually helped to propel literacy in Singapore back in the 1900s when we were still part of the British colony. In the 1960s, at the height of communism across the world, it is the youth who are inspired by the Red Brigade that affect changes in Europe, in Japan. I'm sure Kazumi-san, you are probably aware of this 1968, late 60s activism in youth in Japan as well. And in Indonesia itself, if I may bring up, the political changes that happened in 1998 was directly influenced by the work of youth activism. And some of you might have stories from your parents, of your relative who have been involved, those in Trisakti University, for example, the role of youth in the political changes in Indonesia. I do not believe that at any generation, including mine, youth has been apathetic, right? Youth has been very, very aware of political situations, even in the past. What happened in France happened in Japan for the same cause. What happened in China happened in Malaya and Singapore for the same cause. And this is the age where social media, where technology is not there. So you just imagine your potential now in terms of what you can do. And I think this is something that Abigail has, explained to you earlier about the role of technology and innovation. You have to believe in yourself in terms of your capacity to get your voices heard. Do you know that the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, started as a youth leader when he was at the University of Malaya in the 70s? He was the founder of Angkatan Belia Islam Malaysia. And through that, through advocacy, he was involved in politics. And now, through tribulations and trials, he became the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And for that very reason, he, as part of ASEAN Chairmanship, organized 27 youth and sports activities for the youth to get together, right? Because he believed in the power of the youth voices. And I want to encourage you to continue believing in the youth voices. Layers of skepticism will remain there. You will face people who will be opposing your views because we are diverse, right? Some of us have some advocacy that might not reflect the importance of other group of youth, right? If you ask someone from an able-bodied organization, they might not be able to understand the people with disabilities, right? So my point is advocacy remains important and layers of skepticism will always be there. I am 52 and I am fortunate to be able to be around youth a lot. But someone from my generation might not be. And we might be, behind in terms of understanding the youth priorities of today. But I can assure you that if you advocate very well and you have that capacity for it, you will be heard. And especially in countries like Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, where there is a level of engagement, higher levels of engagement with the civil society, you have a stronger possibility of youth being hurt. There are some countries within ASEAN that might not have that engagement with civil society, with youth organizations that allow them to be heard as effectively as this country or some other countries in ASEAN, but do remain optimistic about the power of youth activism and the power of youth to be able to be heard one way or another. So I hope that
Well, I do have some follow-up questions to your replies, actually. Number one is, I think you mentioned about political literacy, right? That's still lacking. So, and Pak Kamal mentioned political apathy. So, I think it used to be there was political apathy, but do you think that political apathy has disappeared now, or do you still think it is a significant problem in Indonesia, Abigail? Yes.
Like I mentioned earlier, I think our issue is no longer political apathy. I think now the people are already aware, accelerated through hardship and protests and less favorable occurrences. But like I mentioned, so apathy is no longer our issue. Our issue is now hope or optimism and also literacy. Yeah.
And Pak Kamal, again, this point about not just inter-regional or interstate parallels in terms of youth participation, but also intergenerational, right? And we have seen those people who are now politicians, who are now governments, used to be youth activists, right? But once they entered government, they had different mindset, they had different priorities, they had different interests. So how do you balance between, on the one hand, you learn from the older generation, how they did things back in the past, and how do you adapt that to the current situation?
I'm not a politician, but I can say that when you're older, you have different priorities, right? And that's quite common, especially when you have settled down, you have children, and somehow you have different sets of needs and wants and priorities. And this is natural, right, in terms of human progression. But what is important for me, and I think it's important for the older generation, including myself, is to be able to listen, right? And just perhaps stop talking and having an overview, a critical analysis of what their aspirations are, right? East is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. There is a saying, right? But we can negotiate and we can compromise, right? And I do believe that advocacy for a certain issue is important, right? Some of you have advocacy for one particular issue, political apathy, for example, right? Anak-anak Indonesia, you have to be, politically aware. But if you ask someone from the eastern region of Papua, would that be an issue that they want to be aware of? Or there are more immediate economic needs that they want to fulfill first, right? If a youth from Aceh, will they have the same youth concerns as someone who is in Maluku? This is something that you need to decide what's important. And as a politician, when they come together in the halls of power, in the corridors of power, they will have to decide exactly what is important. And it's not my position to tell them, right? It's negotiated, right? Some of our aspirations might not be met, but some of the youth aspirations coming from the eastern part of Indonesia might be met. We never know.
I think it's a critical point about the division or perhaps the negotiation between short-term and long-term. When we talk about the importance of political participation and political aspiration, some may construe it or characterize it as a long-term goal, but the short-term is indeed economic priorities, right? So we need money here and now. So in order to do that, maybe we have to put off our political aspiration later on. But again, this may be misleading for some. Actually, politics is what decides everything, right? So this is the short-term priority. Perhaps we can hear from the audience in the floor, from the students. What do you think? of the conversation, perhaps your priorities. What are your priorities? Are they more, what are your short-term? What are your long-term priorities? When you see this categorizations. Anyone?
Yeah, I think I kind of understanding the question was like, like what Mr. Kamal Mamat said, is the people from the different region will understand the same politics as people that has been more inclined in the center of the Indonesia, like in the Java, I think. Is that the question?
Yeah, that's also part of the question, the different economic situation, the different local priorities, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I mean, if we take an example, for example, in Singapore case, like when the Singapore is being independent in 1965, I think, they are actually being, they would say the harsh word is they'll be kicked out, like because they are being regarded as a very diverse country, and Malaysia. Some opinions say, some narrations say, like Malaysia not really needed. Like it's a lot of responsibility if they really want to take Singapore as part of them. So they just let them alone. But this, I think, when they are being left alone without any natural resource, they don't have any natural resource. So they are trying their best. The youth at the party, I think it was Lee Kuan Yew that is trying to make Singapore a great country. I think because different geopolitics, also having a different understanding of politics, I think this is fine. If we have this kind of standardized politics to one, I think it's become a huge problem because every area in the region has had to have a different kind of perspective in politics. I think it's really, really fine.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I totally understand and agree to a certain extent that absolutely different region with different socioeconomic situation and different opportunities will have different priorities in their lives, and not all of them might put political engagement at the forefront because, for example, they care more about putting food on the table, making sure their families are fed and making sure that their personal aspirations are met. And I totally understand that, and that's why I believe that caring about a nation's politics is not everyone's job. It is actually the job of the privileged because we get to think about these things. We get to protest. We get to make, content and criticism and creative outlets towards the government. It is the job of the privileged and the educated. It's not fair for us to put the same burden to those who are still struggling. I think that's completely fair. However, everyone still needs to be politically educated because, like it or not, everyone's gonna vote. If not everyone's gonna vote, I feel like it's okay to leave some people alone. But unfortunately, everyone from Maluku, Papua, and even di pedalaman Kalimantan, they're gonna vote. And that's why they need to be politically aware and politically active, even though it may be to their certain capacity. We won't expect them to, participate as much, for example, but at least they need to be aware that what is a democracy? Why does my vote matter? Because I think what's important about democracy is, the most important is that it allows us to give those in power accountability. If they mess up, for example, this term, we have a punishment mechanism to not vote for them in the future. And that's the essence, I think, of democracy. And for us to be able to properly enact that mechanism, we need to be aware. And so it is a difficult situation. And that's why I think we cannot just talk about, education and political literacy alone in a vacuum. We need, elevation of poverty. We need to give people, healthcare and every other things, employment, so that they can be elevated to a point where they get to study and learn and participate more actively in society.
So what do you think of those communities or those people who call, let's stay out of elections because those candidates, they are not
golput.
Or even there is also the call for some Indonesians to just live overseas first, kabur aja dulu, right?
Okay.
Because of the situation here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
My personal opinion, right?
Okay.
My personal opinion, okay? Look, I'll start with the golput. My personal opinion, if you have done your research and you cannot find it in your good conscience to vote for any of the candidate because for you, they're all equally terrible, I can't stop you from not voting. It's your right. But it is a choice done with full awareness that you have done your research. It is a fully intentional decision. It is not a decision out of ignorance. Like, gue malas, gue nggak mau riset gitu. You know, like I'm too lazy to go to the ballot. I'm not gonna vote. It's not that. Maybe the output is the same, but the intention behind it is still similar. So, if it's that where you're just lazy or you have no idea or you know what, those things, I would say that is very irresponsible of you. But if it's the former where you have research and you cannot find in your good conscience to vote for anyone, then that's your right. You know, I think those who vote, but they vote because of like weird reasons, like he has the same zodiac as me, or he has a lot of similarity to this favorite anime that I'm watching. I feel like that's just as damaging as not voting. And so I think the point is not about voting or not voting or who you are voting. It's about informed decision. And so that's my opinion. And then the second part, kabur aja dulu. I feel like the people have a right to want a better life for them. And I don't think it's fair to guilt trip anyone to not chase after a better life just so that they can be called nationalistic. I think it's unfair. I think ultimately, we are entitled to search for happiness and welfare because at the end, why are youth interested in political participation? We don't participate in politics for the sake of participating in politics, right? We participate in politics so that we can drive change towards a better life. Ultimately, what we want is a better life. And so if, for example, within our limited resource and time and life, we find that this path is too difficult, I feel like it's costing me more than the benefit I'm reaping. And then I think I want to find a different path. I can't say that that's selfish. I can't say that that's wrong. It's individual choice. But what I can know is that if every single quality youth leave, then the chance that this country may improve is, of course, decreasing. The more our good talent, passionate youth, those who care about politics leave, the more our probability for change decrease. And it's still a game of probability and priority, And so I think it's the job of those in power, in charge, to pay attention to this brain drain. Because it's not in their best interest also to have all these critical youth leave. Because those critical youth may be pesky for their election, but they're the ones who drive innovation and can increase GDP and things like that. And so it's choice. It's an individual choice, and it is an institutional choice whether they want to align incentive or not. And I can't say whether it's wrong or right.
Pak Kamal, again, this is a difficult question because in ASEAN there are many surveys on ASEAN population, maybe ASEAN youth specifically targeted, but the question is, what are the top priorities now? And how much political participation fits into that picture?
In terms of the ASEAN youth priorities, and I actually have the good fortune of going to different ASEAN countries and speak to the youth as well, and just to listen to them and perhaps understand what are their priorities. I remember speaking to a group of youth in Cambodia, in Kampong Cham, near Phnom Penh, and I asked them, what are your priorities? What do you think? But this is a group of Muslim youth, right? And they, at that point of time, was saying that they are hoping to get a land from the government for them to build a madrasa. And this is their most immediate priority, right? And I was hoping because they are 18, 19, university students, they'll be more, talking about, democracy and having more engagement. But no, they are more about, I want to have land for me to build madrasah and to elect the local imam that is governed, that is recognized by the government, right? So that's their priority, all right? And that is something that, they articulated to me, right? But there is another group of students whom I met in Vientiane who mentioned that, Pak Kamal, I want to go to Singapore for my master's, right? And how do I get scholarship there? And I asked them, these are the road, the ways for you to get scholarship, the possibilities. But I did ask them, what other priorities do you have as a youth member, do you think? But for them to think about political engagement is something that is quite remote because Laos has always been about central government. And making sure that they have been involved in decision making is an idea that is still not very clear to them and is still not very institutionalized the way the Philippines has the Sangguniang Kabataan, which is about the youth parliamentarians and the youth decision makers, and in which Commissioner May Gonzalez, who is the chair of SOMI, was once a member of in her earlier years. So there are different institutions, platforms for youth across the different ASEAN countries to be part of, some of them more explicit, some of them less. So that brings me to the second point of which, and this is something that I have established as a political student, as a student of history as well. There is a difference between being political and being politicized. Being political means you are involved in decision making, being part of the legislative council, assembly, having your voices heard. But I think, from my humble opinion, and being in Singapore, coming from the Singapore's perspective, being politicized is very important. You must be aware, right? And this is something hopefully is aligned to what Abigail has mentioned as well, in terms of making sure that you are not apathetic on the issues relevant to you and your community. And being politicized is a good start for any member of the youth community to begin with, because it means that you are aware of the issues surrounding you, whether it's the political issues, whether it's the environmental issues, whether it's issues related to climate change, whether it's issues of access. These are the things that you should be prioritizing.
Thank you. We are close to the end of the session, so any more questions?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sofwa Salsabila Ramadhani. I am from social anthropology student at the University of Indonesia. So, Mr. Kamal talked about politicized, but right now I want to focusing on indigenous people who marginalized, because if we talk about if we talk about indigenous people, we would have to name they are is part of parochial. What I say parochial because currently I studied about parochial and participate politics, and this view is about political aspiration at the local level, or especially regarding indigenous people, strongly resonate with me. But I personally hope the politics can shift from being parochial and fragmented to being genuinely participatory, because parochial is so very relevant for our generation, because everyone knows that if we talk about politics, we will aware, but parochial can't be aware because they are marginal. So, therefore, it is crucial that political systems open up space for meaningful participation from their groups, recognizing their unique perspective, rights, and contribution, because they have so many contribution, but they can't do it, gitu. So, how that ASEAN can make
the parochialism to the participatory. It is. Thank you.
Encourage more participation from marginalized communities, especially indigenous people. Empowerment. Yeah. Second question. We have the most active participant here.
Thank you. Because I'm very curious, actually,
Yes, please.
about this topic. Okay, thank you very much again for this opportunity. My name is Abigail Sunan. I'm from University of Indonesia. I'm majoring in history. So one of the main point of this presentation, I think, is when we are talking about how we can trust more the government itself, right? So what I've been experiencing a couple of years lately, there is, I think, the rise of distrust in the police officer and especially government officer, and they say they are trusting the fire force even more. Like, this is a very strange phenomenon. I think they are trusting fire force more than the police officer itself. But I'm always talking to them that even the greatest fire force couldn't bring down the fire of corruption, because this is a big problem, right? So we have to repair it. But how can we even trust the government when we can't even trust the police officer and the lawmakers, like the DPR itself? How is this possible? Thank you very much.
I think this question is for you, Abigail. Yes. The second question is for Abigail or for Pak Kamal? Second question. Both. Okay.
Thank you again for the opportunity. And my name is Yossi again. I'm from LSPR. I'm just so curious because before we came here, they gave us reading materials. So I read that, and the questions comes from my mind. My first question is how to make youth participation is more long-lasting. Some countries like Rwanda, Uganda, Sri Lanka, and some countries in Europe, they make a quota for the parliaments that's only especially just for youth. I'm just curious what Abigail and also Pak Kamal thought in these issues. What if we make a specific quota for youth, especially in ASEAN, because ASEAN countries is very diverse, right? So I just want to know your opinions. Thank you.
Okay, quota. Maybe one more question from anyone who hasn't asked.
Okay, thank you for the opportunities. My name is Timothy. I'm from UPM Veteran Jakarta. Can I use bahasa Indonesia to ask something?
Ya.
Jadi salah satu yang kita bicarakan tadi adalah bagaimana partisipasi para mahasiswa khususnya dalam keterlibatan politik mereka di pemerintahan begitu kan. Tetapi kita tahu bahwa politik itu tidak hanya terjadi antara mahasiswa dan dengan pemerintah gitu. Nah, tetapi juga politik juga terjadi di dalam kampus itu sendiri. Apa yang ingin saya tanyakan adalah bahwa sebenarnya politik di dalam kampus itu sendiri sangat menentukan bagaimana kita berpartisipasi dengan pemerintah itu sendiri, bagaimana kita berpartisipasi politik kita di dalam demokrasi itu. Artinya begini, setiap kali ada movement gitu, pasti yang menggerakkan adalah mungkin student association, mungkin kayak HIMA, kayak BEM gitu kan. Tetapi kita tahu juga bahwa dalam kampus sering terjadi perpecahan gitu kan. Ada perpecahan antara BEM, ada perpecahan antara HIMA, ada juga HIMA yang malas-malasan, ada juga BEM yang malas-malasan. Jadi sebenarnya meskipun pemerintah pun sekali memberikan sarana bagi kita untuk menyuarakan politik kita, tetapi bagaimana sih dengan mahasiswa kita sendiri itu? Bagaimana lingkungan kita di mahasiswa itu sendiri? Kita bisa, saya ingin mengutip kita bisa pakai idenya Alexander Wen deh. Alexander Wen mengatakan bahwa anarchy is what state make of it. Tapi kalau kita turunkan ke dalam lingkungan kita sendiri, lingkungan politik mahasiswa itu sendiri, kita bisa mengatakan bahwa anarki dari mahasiswa itu sendiri atau bagaimana politik dalam mahasiswa itu sendiri, kita yang bikin lingkungannya gitu. Kalau misalnya dari mahasiswa itu sendiri tidak memiliki tidak bisa hanya menyuarakan saja, tetapi idealisme mereka nggak bisa mereka bikin, bagaimana mungkin kita mengharapkan pemerintah melakukan itu gitu. Kalau kita tidak bisa melaksanakan idealisme kita, bagaimana kita dapat mengharapkan pemerintah juga melakukan hal itu? Itu mungkin lebih ke aspirasi sih daripada pertanyaan, mungkin itu yang bisa saya sampaikan.
Okay,
Terima kasih.
Yeah, thank you. So the question is about the diversity of youth. I think the youth has different aspiration even within campus, right? So not every student agrees with the agenda on campus, and not less so when they have to go out on demonstration. So how can they air their aspirations if they have conflicting different aspirations, right?
Thank you. Soalannya difficult ya. Okay, in terms of the indigenous community participation in the decision-making platforms, It is quite different from one country to the other country. Yeah, in ASEAN, from the ASEAN's perspective, yeah, how the indigenous people can be involved in political, decision making differ in Myanmar and in Indonesia, in Singapore. But in terms of the marginalized community, what I experienced last week during the sports ministerial meeting in Hanoi, the co-chair that came from Japan is a blind person, buta, and he was chairing an ASEAN meeting plus Japan, and he was reading from his Braille text. He is fortunate that his government facilitate his role as the commissioner of Japan Sports Agency to such an extent that he is able to chair an ASEAN meeting and chair the ASEAN meeting effectively. And that means he is empowered by his government. The question that probably I want to ask myself, if I am a member of the indigenous community, and if I am a member of the marginalized community, did my government empower me? And if I don't get the empowerment, what must I do? You have to have your plans towards empowerment, and this is a community effort. Whether your regional community or your advocacy community, right? This is important. And that segue to your question about the youth quota, right? As I said, in the case of Philippines, Sangguniang Kabataan, the entire parliament is 15 to 24. Some communities might have the opportunity. Some communities is purely democracy. Whoever is elected, that will be represented in the parliament without any quota. There are certain countries that have different priorities. In the case of Singapore, instead of having a quota for youth, they have a quota for racial representation. That means if there are 5 people, politicians in that group of representative, there must be one of either Malay or Indian race. So the priority is not on the youth, but the priority is on the racial representation. So there are different ways in addressing advocacy. With regard to the last question on campus activism, which I think I understand the role of mahasiswa in campus activism. Before I rejoined ASEAN, I was part of the National University of Singapore. And when I was there, one of the most pressing issues for the students at that time, 2 years ago, was the unwelcome tourists who visited NUS campus. I don't know how many of you have done that yourself, right? Thinking about the S2 programs. But this is a pressing issue. You know why? They were queuing up for food at the canteen, at the food houses, and they have to wait for 30 minutes before they can buy their food. You know why? Because tourists are queuing up and buying food. And they have an exam in 30 minutes time, and they have to queue up for food. So what do? They organize campus town hall. They invited all the senior administrators, and it was so successful because there was an immediate ban of tour operators bringing in tourists from different parts of the world to the NUS campus. So now, if you go to the NUS in June, July, August, you better come quietly and not part of a tour group, because no more tour groups are entertained already. And this is because of campus activism. This is just one of the advocacies that lead to this law being implemented in NUS. And imagine if this can be done in places like Singapore, which is stricter and more law-abiding. What more in places like Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, where there is a stronger civil society engagement? I leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Abigail?
So the first question is, how can we... There's been an erosion of trust, but we must build trust. But how can we trust even if we don't trust our government institution, our police, our DPR, right? I've read this article like 5 years ago. I forgot who it's from. But it says that the greatest cost towards a country when it is corrupt, so the greatest cost of corruption is actually not state financial loss, but it is the loss of trust and optimism from its youth. The country needs it needs trust and optimism from its youth to advance, but corruption diminishes that. And I think I totally agree with that. And I think what we're observing, the erosion of trust, there's very, very low trust from the people towards the government. That's why even if the government's doing something right, people are like, really? They're like, maybe the media misrepresent this, or like maybe this is not, or maybe this is hoax. The trust is that low that even a lot of actually well-meaning and good policy are misconstrued and get protested. But I think we cannot blame the people, in my opinion, for that low trust, because I think the institution have gave them a lot of reasons to not trust them. And I feel like Indonesian people are actually pretty forgiving. We easy to forget. We see the best in people. We're like, maybe that's not what they mean. But actually I feel very sorry for this person who have done immense evil towards me. And so for an Indonesian to have that low level of trust, I think that's indicative that the fault is already that big. But it's true that for us to advance forward, especially in a democracy, we require a certain level of trust towards democracy, towards our institution. But I think, in my opinion, this is not the issue that for the youth, it's the issue for those in power. We should not give them our trust without them first proving us that, without first them giving us a reason to trust them. We should still reserve our trust. We should stay critical, but staying critical doesn't mean opposing every single thing that they do, right? We engage critically, we appraise each policy, so that if they are, I know there's a lot of people inside the system who are trying to reform, who are trying to do their best, and who are trying to meet the responses of the recent protests. We have seen progress on some of the demands, and so when they do make good progress, or when they do give out good policy, I hope that we get to identify which one we should support and which one we should criticize. And this is the importance of being able to hold nuanced thinking, in my opinion, because usually what I find interesting is that a lot of Indonesians, they want to know whether a policy product is bad or good. If the government wants to roll out this RUU, this bill, they're like, is this good or bad? Usually it's never that. There's no policy that is 100% good. There's no policy who are 100% bad. It's usually a mixed bag, and we need to be able to identify, this article is problematic. This bill as a whole is needed, but there's 3 problematic articles that needs to be revised towards this direction. So we need to be able to engage more critically and more nuanced in that level. And hopefully, as time goes by, the government have the opportunity to correct itself as the demand of the people are becoming more and more demanding, as the people are becoming more critical. It pushes them to be better. And so hopefully over time the trust can be built, but we should not give our trust without them first giving us a reason to trust them, in my opinion. And then about the youth quota, I find that very interesting actually, and I would love to know, for the country that have enacted that, how satisfied are the youth with that youth quota. Because in my opinion, Indonesia, it's to say that, the people in power are overwhelmingly old people, boomers, and we don't have any youth in power. Really? We have a lot of youth in power, guys. We have one in particular that's very powerful, actually. So I think for us to only coin this term as, we need to have more youth in power, might not be the best solution, because it is about which youth, right? I would much rather have DPR, our parliament, to be consisted of old people, but they have our best interests at heart. They have forward thinking, they're pro-democracy, they know what we think, and they want to fight for us, as opposed to have all youth, but all they care about is their own group, right? It's not about age. It's about what they're thinking. It's about their agenda. It's about their interest. And that's why I understand that quota are sometimes needed to level the playing field. I understand, but I don't think we should stop at that. I don't think once we enact quota, for example, this many percentage for women, for example, when that quota is achieved, automatically women's needs are fulfilled. No, there are a lot of women in power who are quote-unquote anti-women. And there are a lot of men in power who are more pro-women, actually. So we should, this is my personal opinion, we should stop with the labels and we should start digging deeper towards what are their agendas, what are their interests, what are their track records. Because I don't care, you can be young, you can be old, you can be a guy, you can be a girl, as long as you have, our best interest at heart. That's my take on quota. And about campus, okay, to be honest, I don't know if I can speak much about this because I did not go to university in Indonesia. And so I do not have first-hand experiences on the level of political mess maybe that are happening in your campus. I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot of, political struggle even in campuses. And see, this is the thing, right? When we talk about our leaders, the politicians, for example, our leaders, those in power, how they are very, obsessed about status and power, how they only care about their in-groups, how they're corruptive and all this, they're not fair, they don't abide by the law and stuff like that. We need to acknowledge that those people do not come from the sky. They came from our environment. They're elected by us. They're raised in our country. They grew up with our values. They grew up with the society that we live in. They grew up with the level of education that is available to us all. And so I always say that us as people who live in a democracy, we can criticize those in power in the name of free speech, but we should never fool ourselves to think that those at the top are unique in their faults. Because if we look around, some traits, do not just exist there. It exists in our level of society too. And so I think beyond just, criticizing, keeping power accountable, we need to have a cultural and educational change as well. And so I don't have immediate response to that because I feel like it's a very deep-rooted cultural issue. And again, I don't have first-hand experiences. But I do think we need to have, a cultural revolution of sort, and one of it is through education. I think once people are thoroughly educated, one of the things I start to notice is how they shift from short-term focus to long-term focus. Because I feel like a lot of in-group fighting, a lot of power grabbing, they're very focused on short-term goal. I want to be the ones in power. I want my group to be the one who holds this Instagram account. I want my guy to be elected as leader. It's very short term. But once we understand, the mechanics, the system at large, we can start to think more long term. I need to build institutional integrity because campuses are the bedrock of research, of development for the country at large. And so I think we need to be able to think beyond our immediate selfish goal, even though that is still very much inherent for us human. But yeah, and I think that can only be done through cultural revolution and education. And it is a very slow process, and hopefully we can keep going in the right direction.
Well, thank you for that. Let's give our appreciation. So we are at the end of our session. I think I like your last statement, one of the last, I think, that youth is not just about age. It's also about thinking. So it doesn't matter if we have too many or some young policymakers, young politicians, but they only favor their own groups, their own parties, their own communities, but they don't care about you. So again, youth is all about thinking, not about age. Thank you. So now I'll give to Pak Adi to conclude the session.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for Mas Ristian, Abigail, and Pak Kamal. Everyone give a round of applause for them. And that was surely a thought-provoking discussion, and I love it so much. And I hope you can learn a lot from this discussion. And actually, this is the end of the first session of today's agenda, and also marks the end of the online session. We are thankful for our online participants, and we hope to see you again on the next campus town hall, as well as other programs by the Japan Foundation Jakarta. For our upcoming agendas, please make sure to check our website and SNS on Instagram and X at JF_Jakarta and Facebook page the Japan Foundation Jakarta. Thank you very much.